Kelly showed us that in order for you to be an effective mother, an effective wife, and an effective friend, that you had to know who you were from the get-go, that you had to know when enough was enough. And I think that she showed Jason that. I think she showed herself that. And then she, not only that, she showed her daughter, despite her wanting to still be married to her father, that I had to do this for me. I had to do this for us because I wasn't going to be the best person I can be being still married to this man. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss career, culture, and the commitment to being our best selves through the lens of some of the most iconic characters in Black entertainment. I'm your host, Lauren A. And I'm excited about the topic today. We're going to be talking about somebody who I feel like gets overshadowed sometimes when it comes to some of our favorite characters, but I think that this conversation is going to help because this character, I feel like, can be seen in a lot of us. First, I want to say that I feel like each one of us in our relationships, in our lives, we have come to the point of a breaking point. I speak a lot about boundaries and how you should set them and how you should advocate for yourself and how, you should be able to speak up and leave if need be. But in these situations, it's not so easy. We know it's not that easy. We can all talk about what we should, could, and would do, but in real life situations, it's not that easy. And we have even witnessed our moms, our aunts, our grandmothers, heck, our siblings, even ourselves, stay in situations where we knew we shouldn't be in. We put up with dishonesty, disloyalty, disrespect, to the point where we should have picked up our dignity, took the dog, took the kids, and left. Instead, we kept our feet planted out of fear, out of public perception, out of lack of resources, even love. And this brings me to who I'd like to bring to the stage today, and that is Kelly Pitts. Y'all, we all love The Game. The Game was one of those shows that I feel like changed it changed the game on how we viewed Black sitcoms. Remember that block of TV that they had? I think it was like UPN in the early 2000s, where it was back-to-back shows that of like new Black sitcoms, not in the era of Martin or Living Single or Moesha or the Parkers or anything like that. It was Girlfriends, it was Half and Half, it was 101. But this block of TV I really enjoyed because it really showed the Black woman in a different light, in a modern way. The Game was one of those shows that kind of fell in that block towards 2006, where, we were like, okay, what is this? We're getting behind the scenes on what it's like in sports, entertainment, and relationships and things like that. So outside of the main characters of Tia Mowry playing Melanie and Derwin Davis, what we kind of overlooked, or what we got to know, was an interracial couple by the name of Jason Pitts and Kelly Pitts, who really set the scene on a different kind of funny. We were able to see how this white woman was able to kind of blend in, kind of navigate not only the sports world, but she was able to navigate her relationships amongst Black women, Black wives, Black girlfriends. You saw her initially as Tasha Mack's kind of like best friend. And I would use that term loosely in the beginning, because Tasha Mack was such a big personality that you really couldn't see anything around her, because she really set the stage and she kind of like demanded the attention. But we saw Kelly Pitts kind of like almost in a sidekick role until we got an idea of who she was.
I'm so sorry, Kelly. I would have talked to Tasha, but it's dark and it's late and I'm sure she has guns.
Locked and loaded. And this is why. See, I can't have all this drama in my house. People getting hauled in by the fake po-po.
This woman was married to Jason Pitts, who was kind of like the elder or the more seasoned player of the team, of the football team. And he was there to instill the game into Derwin Davis, the rookie, right? He was supposed to be kind of the glue that held everybody together. But we realized very quickly that Jason Pitts was a very selfish man and he was a very frugal man. And with that being said, while he was funny, I'm talking about hilarious, his quirks and his kind of like tit for tat with Tasha Mack, that was hilarious. But you slowly got a chance to see the peek into the life of Kelly Pitts and what she had to put up with. Jason Pitts, again, he was a frugal man, but it was almost to the point of he used his frugality, if that's a word, to almost control the situation, to almost control his marriage. And Kelly, being the Stepford wife, being the woman that took such pride in her appearance, she took pride in, I'm talking about the girl's body was fit. Like, Kelly was a fit woman. Like, she had a nice shape. You could tell she worked out. She made an effort to keep herself up, her hair done. She made an effort to, not only keep up herself physically, but she always made herself available to her husband. So that way that he can have what he needs and he could feel supported as this kind of transitioning seasoned member of this football team. Now, I would say that is a difficult role to do. Imagine being with someone who was probably at the top of his game for a very long time, and you get to see the gradual fall of this man in this role where he's not the highlight anymore. He's kind of seen as a veteran, and he almost becomes bitter. He almost becomes bitter for that reality that he takes that out on his wife. And what are you supposed to do as a wife? You're supposed to still be supportive. You're supposed to still be, helpful. You're supposed to still be sexy. You're supposed to still be that helpmate to him as he falls from grace. And unfortunately, you saw his transition out of being in the spotlight or the star player took a toll on their marriage. Being kind of like the captain's wife or the wife of the most seasoned player, you kind of automatically get this status of kind of that girl, right? Of the sunbeams. The sunbeams were the collective group of women who, supported whether they were wives or whether they were, longtime girlfriends. These women got together. They had their wine. They had their, brunch. They had their little meetings at the house where they had charcuterie boards and catering, where they probably discussed things like, the latest philanthropic thing that they wanted to do for the community to show that they were being somewhat useful alongside their husbands playing this football game. And while that's the case for most sports teams, whether it's basketball, NHL, whatever, I think that even that in itself is almost a facade, because a lot of those women really had to drop their own identity to support their man. So what do? We come up with these things to make ourselves look like we are useful, that we are supportive, that we are an essential part of the organization. And so Kelly, being kind of the sunbeam president, was also battling with the idea of having to fall from grace, because as her husband was transitioning out of the role, now Melanie coming in as the girlfriend or fiance of the rookie player, she was starting to be seen and people paying attention more to her and her life with Derwin and things like that. So now Kelly having to take a back burner to not only her husband, but to the sunbeams as well. Kelly did a fantastic job, I would say, of attempting to hold it together at first. At first, I felt bad for her, but I also was proud of her for her attempt to try to save face, to try to, keep people out of her business. But it was almost to her detriment. It was almost to her detriment because none of her friends, quote unquote friends, because unfortunately in the Sunbeam situation, none of them were really her friends, probably outside of Tasha and Melanie, and that could be debatable. But she kept her business to herself almost to the point where her friends didn't even know how bad it was. And then when her relationship kind of went on a decline and she almost had a nervous breakdown, that's when you got to see the real happen, the real unfold, and you really saw how bad she was struggling with it. Kelly was also utilized in a lot of ways that it was almost degrading. Outside of just the frugalness that Jason held over her head, that she couldn't buy certain things, or they had to be, very mindful of sandwich meat and things. Mind you, this man made hundreds of millions of dollars. He made money. That wasn't a problem. And so with him kind of controlling how much she spent on her daughter or on household things or on food, I felt like he used that to keep some control over his own life because he was fearing that he wasn't useful anymore on the team. I think a lot of us do that where, because we're not in control of the outcome of a situation, we try to hold on to things that we can control and literally obsess over it. And I think in Jason's case, that was money. And that was Kelly too, because he had somewhat of control over her because of her, a desire to always please him and to make his life easier, that he used that control over her to her detriment, to the marriage's detriment. And I felt bad for Kelly. I did. Kelly did her absolute best to try to be a good wife. There was times where she did things that were absolutely degrading. Unfortunately, in situations, Jason even used Kelly to get deals sealed. Now, I am a believer that your wife should be a helpmate in your situation. That's the whole point. You know what I'm saying? If you're a businessman, if you are a politician, if you are, whatever, and your wife is able to kind of look around the room, see who's for you, see what everything is about, kind of, guide you and counsel you in decisions that you may be making, that you may get an objective perspective, things like that. I feel like that is what a wife is supposed to do. It is when those situations, though, where you use your wife, maybe unbeknownst to her, to get things done for you, I don't accept that. I don't think that that's right. And in that situation, Kelly was used a lot as an eye candy piece or, whatever, maybe like a scouter to get other women, things like that, for his own benefit, for his own. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like that piece of it. Now, if we have an agreement that is what we're going to do, then sure. But if you just put those expectations onto me or send me out on dummy missions unbeknownst to me just so that you can get something done. I think that that's trifling and I think that that's not right. And it's very disrespectful. And he kind of had a habit of doing that, to the point where Kelly almost felt like a escort, in a sense, a glorified escort in order for Jason to get what he needed. And I think that in that season, I want to say that was like around season 2 or season 3, Kelly, I think that was like one of the breaking points for her. It showed a lack of respect in that sense. Like, you don't respect me enough. You're using me as some kind of pawn. And I felt like with all the things that compiled on top of that, from, the money, the disrespect, the what is that was kind of one of the final straws that ended their marriage. And it was unfortunate, you know. But what I did enjoy about seeing this process of Kelly kind of like going through this issue was that you kind of see where you would bend in that situation. Like, would I be willing to deal with a man who was so cheap that we couldn't purchase a TV, knowing that a TV that was, I'm talking about not even a fraction of what he made, but he just wanted to say no just because he could. Would I be okay with that? Would I be okay with a man who didn't put in much effort to raise our daughter just because he was a football player? Would I be okay with that? Would I be okay with allowing a man to disrespect my friends? And although it could be in the name of fun, but he always had some kind of negative things to say about the women in his own culture. Would I be okay with that? I don't know if I would be. And I think that seeing that, even when I was younger, I got a chance to go inward and see the things that I would be willing to put up with. Now, as an adult rewatching it, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be okay with any of that stuff. I think that they could have benefited very early in the game with some counseling, and Jason figuring out what his next move and how that could actually benefit the relationship, and how he can still be a man, still be a provider, still be, valuable and useful in other ways. I think that was important. I think he did essentially transition into like a sportscaster type of analyst type role. And I think that was great. And Kelly was fully supportive of him in that. However, that newfound excitement and notoriety almost got him caught up with, what was it? Stacey Dash. So again, the root of the issue of their marriage, it just was glossed over by so many other things that ultimately the marriage did fail. And I can't fault Kelly. I can't fault her, because you make the effort to not only join your husband in his ventures and in his dreams, and you make the effort to do that. You make the effort to be the peace holder in your friend group, so that way that we're all just getting along and being the supportive, backbone for our men. You make the effort to be a good mom, to be there, to pick your child up, to help her with her homework, to help her with her hair and her identity and things like that, being a mixed girl. All the things that you try to do, but you do unfortunately get lost in the sauce. And I think that was the case for Kelly, that she was doing so much for so many other people that she didn't even know who she was anymore. And I've seen that even personally in my personal life, like my friends who wear all these titles, have all the accolades, the degrees, the job, their mom, sister, daughter, all the things in everyone's life, and especially the partner, that you don't even realize who you are anymore. And I think that in Kelly's situation, I'm so thankful that she was able to kind of rise up after a while and discover who she was. Kelly showed us that in order for you to be an effective mother, and an effective wife, and an effective friend, that you had to know who you were from the get-go, that you had to know when enough was enough. And I think that she showed Jason that. I think she showed herself that. And then not only that, she showed her daughter, despite her wanting to still be married to her father, that I had to do this for me. I had to do this for us because I wasn't going to be the best person I can be being still married to this man. It's just not safe. It's just not right. And she did what she had to do. And I respect her for that. That's a character that I feel like she did the very best that she could until enough was enough. And she did what was best for her. So kudos to Kelly. In the rise of Kelly Pitts, we got a chance to see, in the game, the latter seasons, for some reason, just lost its muster. I know that it went from like UPN to, I want to say, BET. And in that transition, the show just wasn't the same. I'm sure they had different writers. Melanie and Derwin's character, they left, so you didn't really get that story that we grew up on or that story that we originally fell in love with. So now it kind of honed in more on Tasha's character and Jason's character. But occasionally we did get a chance to see Kelly rise up as well and start to date again. And I know it can be tough when you have gone through a tumultuous relationship, an abusive relationship even, with someone. And how do you date again after that? When you are dealing with infidelity, when you're dealing with, lies and cheating and disrespect, how do you pick yourself back up again after that? I think that, it takes real courage for you to do something like that. And I think with her, initially, she just wanted to get loose. I think that after long-term relationships, for some reason, a lot of us, we really just want to get turned loose, right? Like, that sounds crazy. We really just want to go loose. We just want to go crazy. And she did exactly that. She dated, a cable guy, same thing with Melanie. You date a cable guy, you date this guy, that guy, knowing that it's not really going to be worth anything, but you just want to feel something. You just want to feel kind of irresponsible because you were so responsible for so long. And that's what Kelly did. Kelly started to get loose and started to date other people. And until the point where she was able to say, all right, now, I'm doing this out of spite. I'm doing this out of retaliation as opposed to really doing what is best for me. And you kind of have to slow down too, because the situations that you get in, just like Melanie did, it's almost real sticky. Somebody can get hurt, you can get pregnant, all the things. And so when you take the step back and you see, okay, that phase is now over. Let me start rebuilding who I am so that I can be healthy for the next relationship. And that's what she did. But that's a kind of hard road to travel sometimes, I feel like, because you gotta know who you are and who are you outside of those other things that you were with that person. Who are you outside of that, over pleaser? Who were you outside of the passive aggressive person? Who were you outside of the accommodator? Who were you outside of the mom? Who were you outside of the girlfriend or the wife? That it takes a lot to kind of circle back and get to, especially when you lost it during that relationship. And, I feel like a lot of women go through something like this, and men too. Men go through this too as well, because, what you have to really get over is, what is my new routine? What is my new routine? I was talking to somebody before about this, and the conversation kind of steered around addiction. So for example, if you are addicted to, let's say marijuana, or you're addicted to alcohol or something like that, a lot of times what you're doing is associated with a certain thing. So whether it's a certain bar that you go to after work, it's a certain, maybe before you go to bed, you might light one and go to bed, smoke some weed before you go to bed, things like that. Or if you get anxious, you use that. So the thing itself may not be the sole problem, but what you have developed around that thing it makes it harder for you to get rid of it. So if just using a relationship, if you always, when something good happened, you'll call this particular person to give them the news. That was the routine. So now that that person's no longer there, you have to find a new way to deal with that triumph. You call somebody else, or maybe find another coping skill, whatever. But the hardest part is now, dang, I can't pick up that phone and call that particular person anymore because that routine is no longer my routine. So what do I do now? What do I do now? And I think the same thing goes for the alcoholic who goes to their favorite bar. Like, you may have to find another bar, because if you go to that same bar, are you still able to get the same food, see the same people, hear the same music, and not have that drink? Are you able to, go to bed and not smoke that weed before you go to bed? What is your new routine now before you go to bed? And I think us humans, we're always going to have patterns. So it's hard for us to break patterns and break habits when it's been a part of our life for so long. And people are included in that. I don't know why we don't think that people aren't included in that. Patterns include people. And so it is a real journey to try to detach yourself from people, not because you just miss them and who they are. Sure, that's true, you might, but you miss the routines that you've had together. So the best thing I feel to help you in those situations is to develop better patterns, develop new patterns. And, So yeah, ask yourself, like, what do you like? Like, who are you? What are you interested in? Maybe start from what you liked before that person and just build on that. If you like to paint, if you like to travel, whatever it is that you did prior to that person, start there and maybe progress and maybe build on that and see if that's something that you're still interested in, because that will take kind of like a process of elimination too now, right? Like, what is it that I like now? Because you just kind of sticking to, well, what do I do now? That's not going to help you in the long run as you're rebuilding, because you're going to get stuck in that time. You're going to get stuck in that mind frame. So yeah, I feel like many of us, want to start over and do something new, but that requires us just getting out of our comfort zone and just finding out who we are outside of what we do. So now let's get into our watch list of the week. Speaking of marriage, this week's watch list of the week features a TV show that I have been in a love-hate relationship with for a while now. This show, Married at First Sight, it comes on Lifetime, and it's kind of, I think I would call it the OG of these married shows, where, I think Love is Blind took a lot from this show, because in this show, if you have not seen it, these couples, they are matched by these psychologists and therapists and things like that, based on their, personality and their desires and stuff like that. And they're matched with another person. So of course they choose a city like Chicago, Charlotte, Dallas, and things like that. And they go to this city, they match people up. And then once they're matched up, they don't meet that person until their wedding day. So they literally meet for the first time their spouse on the wedding day. As she's walking down the aisle, he's like, oh, okay, yes, no, maybe. Oh, you get to see that real-time reaction. And, I love this show. It's been a really good show. They've had some really good couples that last. And I want to say it's been at least 10 years now that this show has been going on. They've had couples that last. They have couples that did not last. And some that we rooted for, some that we despised. And now we are in season 18. And Married at First Sight is in Chicago. And in this season, there is one particular couple that I am just like over, okay? Because the blatant gaslighting that's taking place is just out of hand. Like, this couple, so we have, what is the name? Emem and Ikechi, if I'm saying that right. These two people. Now, MM is a woman, nurse practitioner who got her stuff together, who you could tell she's a fun girl to hang around, but she about her business, like she owned her own business and things like that. Ikechi is a guy who, I want to say he tried out in another season before, but didn't make it. So now he's on this season. And you could tell he's just a very sarcastic person, very passive aggressive person. I couldn't stand it. But in this relationship, you're seeing how I feel he is intimidated by her success. And why I say that is he really wasn't as standoffish until he realized how much money she did make. And then now all of a sudden she is an aggressive person. He's not really feeling her and she talks down on him. Mind you, did not even showcase any of this on camera. So I don't know if she's doing this behind the scenes or what, but I'm trying to figure out what he's talking about. So I'm in my living room just seething with disgust at how he's coming across on camera to this girl. And while you can tell she's actively trying to, hold her wits together, how she's trying to really figure out what's the culprit of all this, he's really the absolute king of gaslighting her in a situation, to the point where, the producers are stepping in, the therapists are stepping in and just really trying to figure out what he's talking about. And I just don't like it. I feel like in a lot of these reality TV shows or dating shows, the black women, particularly the dark-skinned black woman, is always kind of put into this negative narrative. I don't like how they're utilized as a scapegoat for bad behavior. And the lack of accountability on this Ikechi guy's part is just ridiculous. Not once him saying that the way he's responding to her is dismissive and it's passive aggressive and things like that. Not once is he mentioning any of these things, calling her out her name, all of these things that she hasn't yet to do. But again, it's her fault, and that's why he's not interested in marrying her. And I just don't like how it's portrayed. You don't have to like the girl. I'm not saying that you have to do any of that. If you don't like her, you don't like her. But to paint a narrative I feel is a false narrative about this young woman, just because you feel somewhat intimidated by her, I just don't like that. You could just at least kind of have some kind of class or have some kind of tact to just say that you're just not interested and let there be that. But for you to paint this narrative on that, oh my gosh, I was just in my house really, dude? Really? But anyways, it is very, very funny, and you get to see the dynamics of how people interact with each other when they are very attracted to each other or when they're not, or when they've got a taste of their family, when they got a taste of how they live in the apartment together. I, quite frankly, don't think that I could ever marry someone at first sight and I never talked to them or seen them or anything like that. I personally don't think I could do that. But I do enjoy watching the show because it is pretty cool. It's not even like Love is Blind, where they actually got a chance to speak to each other for a few days before, they meet. These people have never talked to each other in their life, and they're just meeting for the first time at the altar. So I think that that's a bit much, but they've had some success. They have some success. So yeah, just like that couple in New Orleans. Oh, I love that couple. They were so cute. That was a few years ago though. But anyway, check out Married at First Sight. It comes on Lifetime. It's super cute. So now let's get into our tune of the week. So this week's tune of the week features, of course, I am throwing it back like I did before to the year that premiered the show or the movie or whatever that we're talking about in the episode. So in 2006, there was this album that came out. There was this artist that debuted. Solo debuted in 2006 by the name of LaToya Luckett. And I love me some LaToya Luckett. Like, I have been a Destiny's Child fan for the longest, and I've always loved LaToya Luckett in Destiny's Child in DC4 before they broke off, and it was 3, and you know, all that jazz. But LaToya Luckett, her first solo debut album came out in 2006, and on that album was one of my jams, and that was Torn. You got me just torn in between the two. Yes, that was my song. When I tell you, at that time I was like a young little whippersnapper, like 13, 12, 11. You couldn't tell me I wasn't torn in between the two. You could not tell me I did not have two men that I just did not know who to go with because I'm just torn. That song really had me in a chokehold at that age because I was just figuring out my own self. I was figuring out who I liked. I was figuring out, this guy did me wrong, but I like him. This guy over here, he's very sweet. And, all of that stuff that happens in your preteen age. And around that time, I was just in love with that song. I played it nonstop. I think I had the single. Remember back in the day, we had like the single CDs where it was no CDs with the whole album. It was just a single on the CD. You may have had another single that was like an album cut, but there was just 2 songs on one CD. And I think that's what I had for that album. And I played the mess out of that. So if you have not reached back in the crate and revisited that song in a while, pull it out. Pull it out. Because LaToya, she's still singing it when she goes on her tours or when she's doing the show. She still sings that song. It still gets the crowd going. And yeah, so that's Torn by LaToya Luckett. So that brings us to the end of our episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I hope that you are liking, sharing, and subscribing to this channel. We are going to continue to highlight some great characters in Black entertainment, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a movie, whether it's pop culture, whatever, just because, that's just kind of how I see the lens of things sometimes. Hope you guys tune in again. We'll be back next week. Of course, you cannot manifest anything that you don't feel like you deserve, so create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye.